Hey, I appreciate everybody tuning in. This is the Relationship Lab, all things relationships. I just want to set I want to set the stage about how we go about doing what we do. We're going to have multiple conversations. But in these conversations, some of the things that's going to be happening. There are going to be some differences. There are going to be some disagreement. There may be some dissension. But we want to have and equip everybody with the diplomatic tools on how we can come together and learn from one another in these difficult conversations, right? And I think that's the beauty of it. We don't want no one to hold back. We want to be respectful and courteous and polite, but also we want people to be the more authentic selves with it. We can resolve, I call it the third rail. That's where you get electrocuted. We want to be able to have people come in here and have these difficult conversations. And we'll have a diplomatic approach and have some fun in this, right? Because that's how we learn. But the beautiful thing is, I got a great guest, and I'm gonna have her introduce herself, and we're gonna get started, y'all. Welcome to the set.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm Soraya Hudson. I am, just hearing you talk about relationships. So I've got a 9-year-old at home, and he thinks he knows everything. So we have these debates back and forth all the time. So I can do it with him. I can do it with everybody. But thanks again for having me. So I'm Soraya Hudson. I am currently getting my doctorate degree at Drexel University in Education Leadership and Policy. I also do some research around assessment, identity, specifically how students interact in the education environment and what are the different things that keep them from learning effectively. So I'm really, really excited to talk about how my research kind of coincides with this relationship piece and get into some discussion here.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we did talk before. So, you bring up a couple things, and I love to, get your thoughts on it. How do you see how someone views themselves, and the relationship they have with themselves, impact? Now, I would say, first of all, they're learning and going into different environments based on some of your research.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of prior to my going to grad school, I was in the classroom. And so back when I was in the classroom, there was a book that came out called Grit, right? Angela Duckworth. And what was interesting about her work was she kind of put the onus on the person to kind of persevere through any challenges, right? And I think that sometimes that is true to an extent. But sometimes there are different factors at play that can shape how you feel about yourself. So I think it's both, right? I think there's a duality there. I think that the way that you see yourself is really important to your learning. If you see yourself as a mathematician, if you see yourself as a scientist, yes, absolutely. That can shape how you learn, what you're interested in. We see, for example, women often going into helping professions and men oftentimes going into, business because they're subtly told, hey, you're a woman, you're supposed to be a helper, or, you're a femme, you're supposed to be a helper, you're masc, you're supposed to be ambitious. And what happens to those people who don't fall into those categories, right? So yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with how you see yourself, but a lot of it also has to do with the messages that are coming in.
And I read her work, right? And most of the case studies, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's usually in the inner city environment. Now, I grew up, we said that person got grit, right? That means it's tough, right? And I believe kids that grow up in some adverse situations and environments to persevere, I think they develop that innately, right? Because that's what because when you grow up in a struggle, you deal with struggling. It has its impacts, but you learn resilience just by going through that difficult time, that difficult task. The other aspect of that is, how does that person perspective and expectation impacts that relationship? When you know that someone come from a certain economic challenge, I'm going to say economic challenge, and how that helps shapes that person, one, view of themselves, and then number two, on how they teach them, predicated on expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's two things that I'd like to highlight. One is, in this idea of grit, how, your environment can shape your perseverance. There's such thing as overwatering a plant, right? So
you can be too hard.
It can't be too hard, right? So there's like a perfect amount of grit that you can get before, your kind of maladaptive coping mechanisms kick in. You see this a lot with oldest Black daughters. Okay. They chew cool as a cucumber in any situation, right? They can handle anything. But we're finding that there is a certain degree of disassociation that's associated with that. So they like tamp it down, they get it done. But what we're not realizing is that under the underlying consequences of that, right? So there's a balance. There's a balance. Yes, it can shape who you are. It can build your character, but at some times it can be a little too much.
So you said they're wearing the Superwoman cape?
Yes.
And it can be detrimental to it start eating away at who they are. So how would you help someone? Because I'm sure it's a lot of people like that.
A lot of people,
right?
Like that, yeah.
Especially people who are high achievers. How would you help someone guide and get that someone to intercede on that behalf, or what ways they can look out and get that kind of help and say, listen, it's going to be a breaking point.
Yep.
And you may have a collapse by the way that Superwoman cape.
Yeah, but I think, you're the relationship.
Give help. That's it. So look, I can't do it all, and I ain't got all the time.
Right.
So it's interesting. The anecdotal stuff is right. So you can't do it all. First of all, we interdependent.
Right. Absolutely. Wired to belong.
We're wired to belong. And then the other thing is, there's nothing wrong with saying that I need help. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's the other aspect, because I think that's a healthy way, because we're not meant to carry all the things when we put on ourselves. That's unhealthy, based on unreasonable expectations. And then number two, societal expectations. Because I have to look tough. I remember one time I was doing this interview, and this guy said, Alex, this is hard. This is hard work. I said, well, I expect things to be hard. And he looked at me. I said, yeah. I said, because once I do the hard, everything becomes easy. And then that hard is easy, and the easy is not even hard. Mm-hmm. And he was like, and I said, I'm not saying that. You always prepare for what you expect. If you expect things to be easy and it's hard, then they can shake you. Mm-hmm. But if you expect things to be hard and it's real easy, you go, yo, this is cool in the guy. So I've kind of prefaced that type of mentality. I don't expect that, things going to be easy. Because if it's easy, what do you learn in it?
Right. But then I'll flip it for you. So sure. What would you say to somebody that would be like, well, it's too hard, so hard that it's hopeless. It's become hopeless.
Well, I would ask people, number one, I would get contextual and say, what are you saying? And number two, do you have the tools? Because what I find out a lot of times, people don't have the tools. And then the other thing is, we talked earlier, I believe at times people told them it was hard. So my son in college, and he says, Dad, I'm telling you, the teacher said, the guy walked out the classroom, he said, this is tough. So now that he walking in there paralyzed. I said, no. What's tough for him, or that person may not be tough for you. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's our mindset going into that. And this number two is, who shaped that, right? Was it societal? Was it parental? Was it friends, right? Was it media, right? Because a lot of times we're shaped by that perspective. Mm-hmm. And then we go in and believe that something's hard or something's tough. And then we go in with that trepidation. We go with that fear. And then we don't really give it our best, as opposed to, if I'm curious, right, that mitigates my fear. Mm-hmm. So if I'm trying to learn something that I'm interested in, even though it's hard, I don't see it as something I want to desire and do. Mm-hmm. So that, and a lot of times, most of that stuff is projected on.
It can be, yeah.
It's projected on, or they'll see how one may handle it, but everybody handles things differently.
Yes. And I think that the other piece that I always think about, and I know doesn't always come into play in these conversations, is the brain, right? Your brain is wired mm-hmm. in a certain way, and your brain can tell you what to fear. And there is some research that even says that genetics can pass on fear from one generation to the other, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this epigenetic level that your brain and your genes can pass down. Oh, this is danger, right? And that's how, everyone believes differently, but scientifically, people say, things evolve, right? So you've got the bed bugs in Paris that are not responding to the pesticides now, right? Because things evolve, right?
They build some capacity and say, you need something stronger. Right. It's interesting. Sometimes I believe that, I always say, number one, if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, don't invite me over because I'm going to become the problem. You may be the problem. I'm not. Number two, I think that how one sees themselves is more important than how others see them. Mm-hmm. Right? And then number three, I think that a lot of times in these narrowly defined constructs, people place a lot onto other people and then we carry it. So, i.e., and I want you to expound on this. The angry Black woman. I always tell folks, anger don't come in color. It comes in expression.
Right, right.
And if it did come in color, it'd have a rainbow nose. So it'd be like my shit. All tribes have anger. So and I hear this, I can't be seen as the angry Black woman. I'm like, I see people angry they driving. Mm-hmm. I see people angry every day watching sports. Mm-hmm. I see people angry talking to one another. I see people angry within their own family who they look alike. So how does that impact, that carrying that from that perspective, saying, I don't want to be seen as the angry Black woman, even though we know anger comes in, y'all don't know it comes in expression. Yeah.
So, I think that for me personally, it has really affected how I will say used to show up in spaces, right? I used to think that being more demure, being quieter, just trying to blend in, never letting people see that I'm irritated or upset, never setting boundaries made me a more palatable person, right? But to my earlier point about that stuff kind of eating away at you, it does. Mm-hmm. And so the only people that I'm protecting are out there, but I am harming myself in that capacity. Anger is actually, in my opinion, very healthy, right? It's one of the emotions on the emotional wheel. There's a whole wheel of emotions. I think there are ways to express your anger that may be more effective, more healthy than others. But to say that I don't want to be seen as an angry Black woman, so I'm not going to stand up for myself in this instance where I feel harmed, is not something that I want to do anymore.
And then who narrowly define it, number one? So here's a couple things. I always tell, anger is natural, mad is crazy. Right? Because there's levels to this thing, right? So what people don't realize, once you anger in a way that tempers things, right? Because it's really energy, number one. Number two is, once you get past anger, then you get mad. Then you are in rage. And when you are in rage, you are volatile, right? So there's levels to it. Then once you become that, you become explosive. So now that energy that you're exhibiting is untamed.
So I think what you're highlighting is the expression, right? It's the regulation. It's I'm telling you, I feel angry right now. Versus I'm throwing things off of tables, I'm punching walls, I'm really expressing myself in a way that inspires fear in others or harms others. And there is a very, very vast difference between those two types of angers, right? The feeling is not wrong. The expression is where the problem can come in.
I was coming out of court today. I won't tell you why I was in there, but I didn't do anything illegal. I was at the county, right?
I'm not going to ask questions.
All right. And me and this gentleman's walking out. And literally, we walking out, courtroom, and this guy is carrying a baby, and he's walking with, I presume that's his wife or whatever the case may be. And he is going to town. He is ripping into it. And me and the guy was like, wow. Now, he's carrying a baby, and the woman just was, walking alongside him in a public, and it echoed in a public place. I was like, man, dude, you can't whatever, and he was talking to her as if she was a kid. Now, I don't know if she slapped me upside the head before I walked in there. But
would that have made it right though?
No, it wouldn't have. I'm just adding humor. But it was sad because that was the case. And then how does that impact, that dynamic or that kid being cultivated into that? I want to dive into that some of your studies when it comes to how you are doing this assessment when it comes to diversity. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this is the correct terminology. You can help me when it comes to high achieving. Can you break down some of the studies that you're doing when it comes to particularly, Black women and the field of study that you're doing in research?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I look at is how emotional and physiological responses to identity-based rejection impacts the learning process, right? And so what I have done is I have taken this construct of identity-based rejection, which goes a little further than discrimination because it looks at identity as multifaceted. So I'm not asking about race. I'm asking you as a survey taker, what facets of your identity are most important to you? And what facets of your identity do you feel like are rejected in your learning environment? So I have that construct. And then the other construct is the emotional and physiological response to it. And so, I'm not going to nerd out and tell you.
No, get down. We don't put up definitions here.
So
you can Google this, y'all. You don't know what words mean. Go ahead.
I used what's called the Rosh method. And the Rosh method, when you're building a survey, allows you to see how people are responding to certain items. Mm-hmm. And then based on how people are responding to items, you can actually map it out and see what items are most difficult and what items are easiest for people to answer. So you come out with a really nice scale and you can add items or subtract items so that you can have a nice spread, a nice range of what people are thinking and feeling. So then I can actually, through statistical analysis, see how people are responding to identity-based rejection, emotionally and physiologically, and what symptoms are kind of the most benign at the bottom of the scale and the most severe. So when you talk about high achieving, regardless of how people are achieving, one of the purposes of my studies was to highlight that even though Black women are graduating, they're getting jobs, we're being bosses, we're doing all the things, right? We are hurting. And one of the things that my study highlighted was that despite the fact that we're doing all of these great things, we probably aren't really taking care of ourselves because our symptoms are like right around what I will say is what most people respond as severe. Yeah. Our symptoms are right around the middle, right around here. So there are people up here that are experiencing things that I don't even have questions to access yet.
So some of the help, or how could community, I have my thoughts, but how in that situation, what are some of the markers, right? Mm-hmm. And when it comes to themselves and how they relate to people at work and interpersonal relationships, or at home as well.
Yeah, so there are actually some specific items on this survey that talk about this. So I dread going to my learning environment every day, or I've had trouble getting out of bed based on an identity-based rejection incident that I've experienced in my learning environment. And then there's kind of some of the more traditional distress responses: racing heart, sweaty palms, breathing fast, feeling dissociated or disconnected from the body. Those are all things that people can experience.
Self-doubt would be one.
Self-doubt, absolutely.
Yeah, man, these are some difficult. So so my thoughts, here are some of my thoughts when it comes to that, right? Because I think we all, based on these environments, always say, a lot of times we concede power based on that narrowly defined stereotype. And then to think, who's behind that that's causing this, self-inflicted, internal, because it's an external factor, to have that kind of impact. And how do I take, power back, right? And how do I begin to see myself in a way that's healthy, right? Predicated on my success is determined by how I have defined success, not how someone else has put these benchmarks, right? You're not successful if you're not married. You're not successful if you don't have this type of job. You're not successful if you don't have that job. You're not successful if you don't have that type of marriage. You're not successful if you don't have 4 kids, 2 kids, drive this car, a dog and a cat, right? So I think that's what happens. And then if you achieve a certain amount of success and you don't have the trappings or the accoutrements of society or the amenities, right, of what privilege or success looks like, then you start feeling a certain way, right? And I think that's shaped and defined by culture. And then you got to say, you know what, y'all? I'm cool with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Psychologically, right? I think you got to get to a point you like, really, y'all don't really matter.
Yeah. I mean, you really have to start unpacking. And it's so hard now because we have social media, right? And we are all in everybody's life world all the time. And it's so easy to compare. But what I've realized is sometimes you can take on things that aren't even yours. You're doing things that you don't even like. I often tell this story. It's a funny story. I realized I didn't like chickpeas. I was eating chickpeas 2-4-7 because, all the girls on TikTok, all the girlies on TikTok were roasting chickpeas and they had these chickpea salads. One day I'm eating my roasted chickpea salad. I was like, this is nasty. I don't really like chickpeas. I don't like chickpeas. And it was like this big, aha moment, like, oh my gosh, I've been eating chickpeas. I don't like them. And because, all these TikTok salads and they're so filling and they're so full of fiber, I'm like, I don't like this shit,
You know, it's funny. It's, I say, I can tell what you eat based on how you speak. So sometimes we don't realize how if we don't have good filters, how we can let someone determine, number one, how we feel about ourselves, because they give off a certain kind of perception. And, they may be spitting that stuff in the background. I'm not saying that you are, but it could be the case, right? And we don't know they're going behind that, right? I mean, at times, and I'll say this, social media is nothing but the virtual playground, right? And then the other thing is, most of the time, it's really not based on reality, right? And it creates this kind of delusion because I'm not saying these sad people on there all the time, but that would be kind of depressing. But also, I think that what's in people's lives, right, that we get so consumed in someone else's life that we forget to live our own life. And then we begin to live our lives through others.
Yep.
And then we let those distractions or influences determine our self-worth.
Yeah. I've always said that, especially when social media started getting real big, it caused adults to stay in the looking glass self phase a lot longer, where they are just seeing themselves through the lens of how they perceive other people perceive them. And it really is something like you gotta unplug every once in a while and just check in, like, who am I? Do I really like this stuff that I'm eating? Do I like to have mimosas every Sunday? Or do I want to, be in bed reading? Like, you really have to, as you said, build that relationship with yourself. And that doesn't just mean like, I'm going for my manicures. It really is sitting like, do I like chickpeas? Like, do I actually like this, or am I doing it because I feel like it's the thing to do?
I was talking to this person and a group of students, and they said, I said, so why are you guys on social media? And, but everybody live their family, like, everybody always doing fine all the time, right? So we know that's not true. Number one, I think you got to see it for what it is.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yep.
Number two, you got to say, is this live or this Memorex? Because we don't know. So I was down here a couple weeks ago, and with a group of us talking about doing a podcast. And I was talking to a young lady, and I said, what's your show's going to be about? And I made her give it away. I won't mention anything. She said, perfection. And I said, wow, that's interesting. I said, so what's making you, do a show in regard to that? She said, well, people always critique you for every little thing, right? So what I said to her was a couple of things. Number one, I'll be doing a podcast, right? I'm going to be doing, I'm going to put myself out there, right? So number one, when you put yourself out there, you won't say stuff. Now, I don't get hyped over someone liking me. Because I don't know why someone likes me. Somebody can say, I like you. You can get the teeth in your mouth, the hair on your head, the eyes in your eyes, your eye sockets, right? It could be the clothes. It could be a multitude of reasons why people like you very lightly, not deeply, right? So number one, we can't give power to that. And number two, if someone dislikes you or critique you, you can't, with both of those, you can't get two eyes in there. A lot of people like me. Oh, I feel good about myself. Now a lot of people don't like me. I feel bad about myself. You got to understand the dynamics because you don't know in which the reasons why. Right? And then what happens, we begin to let someone we don't know behind some camera, some computer, not camera, but a computer, right? Or a screen determining who we are. And you got to see it for what it is and be like, if they like me, they don't really know me to a degree. They could. But they're not doing a full assessment as you're talking about the work you're doing, trying to find out what's my personality, things that they surmising. And I'm not saying it's a bad or good thing. I'm saying for the person, understanding that when you get out here, you begin to have conversations, there are going to be people who critique you for all kinds of reasons. And they can be just straight up miserable, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes, I call them people with champions, right? And it is what it is. You can't get that. If you give people that kind of power, they will always move the goalposts. And then who you are will be determined by them, not you.
Absolutely.
And you got to have a good sense of yourself because you're doing the right thing for what's good for you. Well, could we go for it?
Oh, you good. So I think part of knowing yourself is knowing who your people are, right?
Yeah.
And so I have a very small group at the board of directors, right? These are the people, if I'm making any...
That's a great point. Go for it.
Any major decision in my life, I'm going to my board of directors, right? Because I know, I know myself. Yeah. And I have shown them the real me, right? And there are people out there that get the filter me, right? The me that I am comfortable with, the outside world seeing, but these are the people who know my heart, right? And the people that see you through social media, through screens, through TikTok, whatever, you're not going to put your whole self out there for consumption. But this small group of people, I know they have my back. Yeah. They have seen the good, bad, and the ugly, and I think those are the people that you want to focus on. So that if they say I'm tripping up, if they say, oh yeah, girl, you're not living your values, those are people I'm going to go, I gotta stop.
Your counsel. So I believe all humans, right, whether they want to admit it or not, the number one thing they want to know is who am I, right? Who am I innately, right? Now, if you don't have that right, then it'll impact number two, what's my purpose? And who determines my purpose, right? And then number three, what gets most of us in trouble for who describes number three is the comparison. Right? And that's the killer. That's the individual. And when I say individuality, we are independent. I'm saying from a point of you don't got know thyself and have a good sense of yourself and how you are designed and how you are innately have things that other people don't have. And once you tap into that, then I think that can take you further. Then I would say that, and I'll let you jump in. The other thing is, I said, number one, everybody got innate ability. It's something innate, and you can Google that word if you don't know the definition. I'm not going to be giving all the answers away. So, number one, what is my innate ability? I'm saying these are some great questions to ask yourself. Number two, you got to be aware of it, right? And some people aren't aware. Now, if you uncover it or discover your innate ability and you become aware of it, here's number 3. You got to believe it. See, because some people can acknowledge a habit, be aware of it, but then they won't believe. Because then they do the other thing because they compare. And I always tell people, you only can work with what you got. You can't work with what you don't have. And we'll look at too often what the 2 things we don't have as opposed to the 50 things we have.
Yeah.
And that begins to have that downward spiral, internal cannibalism, right? Why it begins to eat away at us. If I only had one with that person have, I only had, because you're always going to want something more than it, right? But if you say, I'm cool with me, right, and my success is determined by how I have measured my success and what I plan on accomplishing, right, then I think you're in a good space.
Yeah, and I think along with the innateness, it's something that you like to do, right?
Yeah.
It's not just something that like you're doing because you feel like you have to. It's something that you get lost in. And I often think of those kids who, you know, their parents push them into one career, but they're really dancers or whatever. But that thing that makes you tick, you know, that you can get lost in for hours. I think that's a really big part of it. If you can do something and you're like, oh, this is my thing. Like, don't bother me. I'm in the zone.
You know, what's the influence of that is lifestyle. Your parents like, and if you grow up in a way where your parents have done well and you're used to a certain kind of lifestyle, and that's just things haven't changed. And you say, hey, I want to be a dancer. The first thing you're like, where you gonna live it? You know what you used to? I mean, this is the point, right? This is what the parents say. You're like, no, I want to be free. They're like, ain't nothing free. You know, they're killing the dream, by the way. And then someone has determined how you want to live, right? Which impacts that saying that you need all these things in order to be successful.
Yeah, and I think, look, I think that is the question we are not going to answer it in an hour or two, right? Because
we got no time.
It's because, you know, you do, I mean, you do need to put food on the table. You do need to, you know.
It has to be whole food.
Right, it doesn't have to be whole food, you know. Maybe, just maybe, you can go to Giant. I mean, no.
You know what's interesting? I just want to pivot on this point. It's interesting how people say, I want organic. Organic means you didn't mess with it. And you ain't got to give me the apple, don't put nothing on it, and then it's organic. Don't act like it's this new label that you came up with for a mechanism where you can charge me more money because you pulled the apple out the dirt and you ain't putting nothing on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because and that's a whole nother thing. I won't go on a tangent. But that's what and then we use these labels.
Yes. Yeah.
This is organic. Right? And then that means premium. And here's the thing. If we become organic to ourselves, to our natural, who we are naturally, and then we begin to cultivate, right? And nurture who we are in the right soil, meaning the right environment, then we will be our best self. You know, I asked if you ask a lot of people, and remember this is a relationship with yourself, when I asked a group of young people that want to get their 10th, 11th, 12th graders, I said, who do you want to be? No. What do you want to do when you grow up? And who you want to be? Now, this is not a trick question. So they talk about what they want to do, and then they pick the profile. And I said to them, the answer, no, I'm not going to give away yet. So then I said, have you ever noticed old people, when they get older, they get all cranky and I'm old, I can just be ignorant. Now, I ain't saying that's the right way to go. You know, they brush you a lot. I'm old. They get away with anything. And then everybody go, they old. They don't even worry about it, right? You know what they have discovered? Now, I'm not saying that's appropriate behavior. So let me clear the ground. What I am saying is what they have discovered is, I don't care what you think about him.
Yes.
Now, it takes some people 70 years. So the answer to that question is, when I grow up, I want to be me. Because it ain't nobody else left but me to be. That's the thing. You don't have to wait till you're old and then you're miserable, you're cranky, you cut me a lot, and you stepping on my foot, and you hit me with your cane. I take the breathe, but I'm just saying, I'm just saying, as you old ass to be a little mean, that's not a good way to do it. But I'm just saying, but that's the thing. They have discovered, I don't care anymore. And what we talked about earlier was the women carrying it. Sometimes we care about too many things, and more importantly, about things other than us, as opposed to how we think about ourselves. Yeah. But that is the healing mechanism. And when we talk about, you just go, you know what? I don't care. And what I mean is don't care. I don't care that I'm so worried about you, it impacts who I am.
Yep.
From my emotional, psychological, or mental, or physical, or relational health. That's the secret sauce.
Yep. What did Cookie Lion say in Empire? I gotta put me first, Lucius.
Jill did say, I love me some bit.
Yeah, so, we took a pregnant pause. From your research, what do you think that roadmap is to discovery or individual health, which always turns into relational health with other, interpersonal with others, where people work, live, and then where they socialize?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that is how I ended up on this journey. And it started with kind of my own experiences. And I really just needed a place to validate some of the things that I was feeling, this like intense loneliness, this need for community, this, I'm grinding, I'm still not happy, what is my purpose, right? And developing this instrument, it was like a 2-year process. Once I went through all the pilot studies and just knowing that there were other Black women and femmes out there that felt just like I did, really validated my experiences. And so when you talk about relationships, finding that community was life-saving for me. And building, as I've been calling them, the board of directors, right? Like my go-to, where I can not only talk about the times where I'm social media happy, but man, look, I'm so discouraged right now. Yeah. Like, I don't know if I really want to continue down this path. I'm so frustrated. I'm not getting the job offers that I want. Like, I can share that with them too. And so this need to build, first of all, that validation, that getting to know yourself, because that's a scary place to look into. Some of the the dark parts of yourself, some of the intrusive thoughts people have. I mean, like, sometimes your intrusive thoughts will make you clutch your pearls, right? Like, oh my, did I really just think that? But I think that's part of getting to know yourself as well, is to know all parts of you and just sitting with that. So to your point, I think the next stage is figuring out what intervention looks like for Black women, and what it looks like to build communities like that, where you can share these experiences and they can be validated. So now we've got an instrument that shows with hard numbers, oh yeah, this is something that other people experience. So, what does an intervention, and this would be an interdisciplinary collaborative with, psychologists and sociologists and people who also do this work.
How can you help those, and how can you help I'll use the participant or the persona, right? The Black woman, and then those who they engage with outside of that community. Will that tool help them understand that dynamic where that causes friction? Because it's one, helping self, right? Number two, how do we make those other places that we navigate healthy environments? Is that a part of that whole process?
Yes. And I think part of it is understanding and getting in tune with what we feel, right? So one of the things that has come up during this research that I really want to, the next phase of this research is going to be to do some interviews and saying, okay, now here are the numbers. This is what the numbers say.
what, based on your experience, do you think can explain these numbers? Because I think that part of healing, part of liberation, right? There's a psychologist, her name is Lillian Comas Diaz, and she focuses on psychology specifically for marginalized and minoritized people. And she focuses on liberation as a part of that healing process. And I'd like to, kind of use her work as a foundation, because it starts with knowing yourself and what you're feeling. And now we have the numbers to validate those feelings. Now you can then start to communicate, okay, what does this space need more of for me to be able to be more of myself, right? Because people can't respond to you if you can't communicate that need, always.
Yeah. Now, I know, because it's in my head, right? I know man gonna be like, yo, man, you gotta ask this question, man. I don't know why you keep avoiding it.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
Man, I've been waiting an hour, and you ain't asked about how the brothers be dealing with women like this.
Yeah, relationships, right?
I know people want to know that answer, right? So, if in this context, let me get it right. In this context, right? In their engagement with men, right? And it could be dating, it could be significant other, it could be, people in their family, it could be people they work with, right? Have you uncovered how that impacts those intimate relationships and then those interpersonal relationships when it comes to the opposite sex with men?
I have not.
Okay.
I have focused on the learning environment.
Okay.
But what I will say is, kind of in my own experience, one of the things that I have learned is that when I learned that boundaries are for me, and what I will and will not accept, that communication became easier.
Okay.
Because I was able to draw my line in the sand, not to control somebody else's behavior, but to say, oh, this is a line I don't want crossed, right? And that is with, I do my 9-year-old as well. He's in this phase where he gets all huffy and wants to. Oh no, you're not gonna call me stupid. That's not. No, that is not. That is not how we are going to engage.
It's. I think too often, I believe too often, because I have thought about this a quite deal. When finding compatible companionship, right? And compatible don't always mean agreement.
That is true.
And I want people really to understand that, because there's always diversity of thought, right? And difference can make the difference in your relationships, because we've seen that worse in corporate America as well. We, too often human beings, and I think when we achieve a certain status in life, we let titles and pedigree at times to determine who we are compatible with, as opposed to the character of the person. And I'm gonna say this, and I said this at another event. We will date, we will marry, we will be intimate with people based on status. And status could be aesthetics, it could be pedigree, it could be wealth, whatever. But you will always break up with people based on character.
That is true.
And too often, look, status gets you in the door. Character keep you in the house.
I can agree with that.
Go ahead.
I can also see it from the flip side, right?
Okay.
I can see it from the flip side. So, yes, character will keep you in the
character
house.
matters.
And I'm never going to argue.
Characters are welcome.
I am never going to
Not being a character.
Never going to argue you on character.
Go ahead.
However,
Go ahead.
So the status piece, right, is really interesting, especially now.
Yeah.
Right? We got women who are earning more than ever before. They're, but then sometimes they come home and then they're expected to have worked an 8-hour day.
Okay.
You done worked an 8-hour day. We both done worked an 8-hour day. And instead of me coming home and looking at you like what you cook, you looking at me like what, and we both tired, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that it's not just status. It's not just, but I think that some of these conversations have gotten a lot more complicated because of our cultural evolution that we haven't quite figured out yet.
All right, so here you go. I'm gonna give some secrets away today. All right. So in that case, right? So now we switch into, and then how this impacts, right? Because so gender neutral roles for household duties, right? Number one, who got the capability? Because now we're going to talk about the tools.
Yep.
If you can't add, don't be counting the money or managing the checkbook.
Right.
That is not a gender thing. That's a capabilities thing.
Yep.
And I think too often, right, in these narrowly defined constructs, men do this, women do this. And people got to figure out what works best for them, right? So that's number one. Who has the competency? Who has the capability? Number two, who's available?
Yeah, exactly.
That's availability, right? So now, who's available to do whatever? Wash the clothes, cook the food, wash the dishes. You know, like I said, if you put your butt in them drawers, you dirty them, you should learn how to wash them. That ain't got nothing to do with no gender. And too often, people are like, well, washing clothes are for women. Well, her name is not Maytag.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And when it comes to guys at times, you know, his name is not Bob Vila. That don't mean he can fix everything either. Maybe she good at fixing something, right?
Yeah.
So, and then number two, the responsibility, right? So who's responsible? And responsibility means I have the ability to respond to the situation or the task at hand.
Nicely done.
Right? And then number two is respectability, right? We have to respect one another.
Yes.
And I hear all the time, you know, men will value respect over love. And women will value security and safety over, I don't know what they say, I don't know, a gift, I don't know. So, and those are now, first of all, no one want to be disrespected. No. Number two, if you love me, you'll give me security. Too often we narrowly define security based on the financial model.
Right.
And that narrowly defined construct. And then at times when we get into these engagements and these interactions and these conversations and these relationships, we put ourselves in a box based on societal norms. And then now two things. Now what happens is I begin to measure my masculinity predicated on what I can do financially. So if you do meet someone, right, and then at times women have that demand too, right? So I think all these things have to be, you got to have a conversation about them. And the fifth one, I had a fifth one. and then I think commonality is the other thing. What are the things that we have in common?
Yeah, and
Right.
I think some of that is just the balance, right? You know, you're the dude that likes all the, you know, the drumsticks. She likes the flats. Great, like that perfect relationship, right? So I think, you know, that's a silly example. But,
no, that works. Yeah.
You know, you bring something to the table, she brings something to the table, vice versa, or, you know, in a same-sex relationship, you know, he brings something to the table, he brings something to the table, she brings something to the table, she brings something to the table. But I think that it's all about that balance. And quite honestly, there are some women, some men who are like, hey, like, this is my standard. I want you to be making $150K. That's not negotiable. That's your standard. But just make sure that the other person is treating you well too, right? Like,
well, I would say that is lifestyle.
okay.
Right? Then within that lifestyle, right, I think what people have to understand is then how that is nothing but a resource, right? And then the winds can change, as you can see in this economy. So I think that at times people got to understand that if we live this type of lifestyle, number one, is it healthy? Because most of the time people can live beyond, you know, what they make, and then that becomes healthy. And then number two, what is the purpose of it? And I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. What I am saying is begin to have these conversations based on what those common values are.
Yeah,
Right.
I think I think that you hit the nail right on the head. It's the common values, right? Because if I value, this is so not me, but if I value, every birthday I want, a Louis Vuitton bag, and there is no negotiating that. And if you are somebody who values, something else, then that's not going to work. That is not a shared value. However, if you both are people who are like, hey, I don't want gifts, let's do experiences.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Because you both have that shared value. So I think it's a matter of determining what those are, and that goes back to the knowing yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe somebody might be like, hey, I want somebody who makes 150K, 200K a year, but that is for a reason. And if they don't know what that reason is, they can't then communicate that.
And I think that's the conversation that need to be explored. Because here's the thing. If that gift, Louis, my name ain't Louis, so I ain't getting you Louis. And I need to find Louis because he's charging too much money. That's the other problem. Him and Fendi and Prada. Who's Prada? You know what I'm saying? It's like a salad to me. But anyway, I'm just joking. It's because guys like watches too. I like watches. So that's the man's pocketbook. But I think it all comes down to a lot of time in these interactions, have we had the conversation?
Right. And I don't think we do often
Yeah.
enough. I think, you get attracted to somebody, you have 2 dates, you're like, all right, this is working, this is great. You're compatible. Before you know it, you're married, you got 2.5 kids, you got a dog, and you're looking at each other like, oh, well.
Yeah. And so here's the question, and I'm helping because we talking about we're going to give people the diplomatic tools or we're going to give them the tools when we deal with these subjects. Number one, the question is, what's expected of me in a conversation? Number 2, is that expectation unmentioned, right? Because we have unmentioned expectations,
Yeah.
hidden expectations, right? Number 2, you got to ask the question is, whatever I expect of others, I must first do for myself, right? That's a good barometer, right? Number 2 is that health? Well, I'm number 4 by now. The next one is that expectation healthy?
Now, I'm going to push back on your number 3 just because.
Go ahead. What's number 3?
That it is
Whatever you expect of others.
Yeah, that
You should
you
do
for
yourself.
Because a lot of times that's where the hang up is. Women or even men are like, hey, I do this, and this for myself. I expect this from my partner.
So now then that has to be, and that's an internal value. So if if I pay bills, you should pay bills. I mean, that's kind of given, right? If I brush my teeth, you should brush your teeth.
Amen.
I mean,
Yes. Yes.
I'm saying that people have people have unrealistic expectations that they haven't required for themselves.
Give me a for instance.
I want you to make $250 and you make $50,000. I make $250, but I save $100 of that. But you make $100 and you spend $150. I expect you to do things that I'm not willing to do.
Okay.
Right. So in that contrast, I'm saying that. And then once again, the question is it healthy? Because these are the things that, once again, how we see our framework and how we see our value and what's our relationship with myself, and then how is that determined, right? By that. So some people allow accoutrements or things. I always say I got stuff, but stuff ain't got me. So we allow stuff to begin to define us. We will like the title begin to define us. We'll like the job that defines us, right? And how one look define who we are, as opposed to, and that's what I'm saying, the character part. I'm not saying those things aren't important, but that's the ornaments on the tree. The tree is the character, and all that other stuff is gifts underneath, So in order to build something like you're talking about with great stability and great healthiness, you got to first find out, number 1, what's the hitch in my giddy up? Number 2, what do I got to do so I can have a healthy state of mind with myself, right? And then number 2, then everybody else that'll be a byproduct of how I feel about myself and what I expect of others. And then we can have these critical conversations and come to a remedy. And then the other thing, what has influenced our belief system? Now, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes somebody else calling the plays in our life. Sometimes we, like you said, we look at social media and we look at TV and now we say, I want that. And then one, is it attainable? And then they only showing you a snippet of what that may be.
Right.
Right. And just because that's the life they live, that don't mean we have to live our life the same way, i.e. our parents, i.e. our neighbors, i.e., yada, yada, yada. So that's what caused a lot of consternation when it comes to who we are. Because if I don't have this, then I'm nothing. But then people have a lot and they still feel like there's a void. You know what I'm saying? So that's it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Olympic gold medalists after there's
the drop.
Because then what else is there? Like I'm starting to feel that too. Like I've gotten a terminal degree. I'm like, what do we do next? Like
it's like the Scarface thing. Remember he was sitting in there, this is it? Good food and this is it? This is what I achieved. Right. Because here's the thing. That's the trap. It's stuff, y'all. It's stuff. And you can't get caught making that the thing.
Yeah.
It's a part of the process. And this what eats at us. Because then guess what? It feels empty. And then you go, that's a part of the process. That's what I achieved. Putting it in this right perspective. I think that's the key thing. Putting it in this right perspective, and that's and always trying to answer the unknown question or have the answer that you don't even know the question to. What are you going to do after this? You achieved so much. What's next for you? You're like, I don't know, this was it. Right? So, but I'm saying that's what, sometimes we got to be careful about the voices in our head. And the voices of our head could be how we grew up, what we see on TV, our parents, friends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? And I believe that's what creates all this confusion and chaos. Right? And then we walk into an environment and we walk with these labels, right? Then somebody put the label on us and then we not like that, but then we can't show that type of expression or that type of personality. I remember one time I was going for this interview and this gentleman asked, he said, Alex, I want to know if you fit in. I'm like, number one, what I'm fitting into. Number two, it ain't a matter if I fit in. If the question is, will you make room? Because you asking me to be disruptive. You asking me to interrupt somebody's day to talk to me. It ain't like that guy it's this guy named Alex that's going to call me around 12 o'clock and I'm going to interrupt my day to do that. No, that person has to make room for me who he don't know or whom they don't know to sit down and want to engage and have a conversation, right? So it's this whole part about fitting in. And then what are we fitting into?
Yeah. I always go back to neuroscience with stuff like that, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
We are, it's Baumeister and Leary. They have this belonging theory. And basically it's this idea that if you are out alone, like again, we're talking about back in where there's saber-toothed tigers and all of that. If you're alone, right, you're a lot more vulnerable. And so we are, as humans, wired to belong to groups because we still feel that sense of safety when we, congregate, when we belong. And I think that one of the things that we have not yet unpacked is like, what does that mean now in a society when, it's a little different? We don't need to necessarily belong to survive anymore. To an extent, right? We still need our families. We still that is healthy. But looking for this validation outside of us, how far are we willing to take it? And do we need to take it that far at this point?
Well, I believe COVID was a reset. And I think what it did was, it depends on how you looked at it. No matter how it got here, it depends on how you look at it. Because it's here, you got to deal with it, right? So all of a sudden, people thought that, man, I got to consider you. Why I got to do this? Well, I tell people they got stop signs outside. They got lights outside. They got red, yellow, green. Matter of fact, they got a speed limit outside. And when you're in certain neighborhoods, they got a speed bump, right? We got turn signals in our car, meaning that if you're on a road, you got to know what decision I'm going to make because I got to be courteous to you, right? So for some odd reason, we lost the perspective of, like you said, belonging, that we're interdependent, right? Meaning what I do impact you. Now, you may not care that it impacts me, right? But it does. The other thing is, what it also did, I'm looking at it in this framework, it also, man, I wasn't taking care of myself. So I have compromised for a lot of different reasons. It could be good reasons, right? That my relationship with myself, number one, ain't healthy because I was too busy. Man, my relationship with the person I'm living with, and they're like, who you, Willis, right? Number two, my emotional state of mind is not healthy. My physical being, right, is not healthy. And it impacted what? Breath and breathing, right? Which is the first, element. Your health is your wealth, right? All that other stuff is minutia. I'm telling you, at the end of the day, all that stuff is minutia. That's what I'm getting to, that if people ain't healthy, it doesn't matter the resource they have, right? Then it's not going to bear the fruit that it needs to be. It's going to create toxicity, right? It may even create chaos. And then you brought up something key. Sometimes we are in toxic relationship with our friends, and what it does is it contaminates our mind. And sometimes we watch things that are very toxic, and it contaminates our minds. Back to what we talked about earlier, being narrowly defined by these labels and people putting them on us. Like, who made the rule you can't wear white in the winter? Like, where'd that come from? Who was in a room somewhere and said you can't wear white in the winter? What? I bought white. I'm wearing white every day. I mean, who come up with this stuff, right? I mean, it's silly, right? But you be sitting there going, well, you can't wear this at this time. It's a group of people. This is what I'm saying. People don't realize it's a group of people somewhere telling other people this is what we want them to do. Here's another one. You brought up a key thing. Who decided that on this day, I got to do this for you, and if I don't do this on this day, buy your card, get you some chocolate, get you some diamonds, take you to dinner, right? So I just named Hallmark. they in your mind. They got me obeying Hallmark. The dinner, I'm at Eddie V's. Eddie V's. You ain't taking to McDonald's, I can tell you that right now. Chick-fil-A won't even be satisfied. And they got a line outside all the time, right? And then roses, and all kind of sudden they go up when that day come around.
That is true.
Right?
That is true.
And then I have to do all these things. And if I don't, watch this. This is how crazy. If I do not do this on this day, forget other days of the year, then you don't really love me. So somebody, somewhere, and what all we talking about are always calling plays in our life. And we don't realize how much power we give to others.
And while that is accurate,
you better give me them flowers.
I'm not going to get in trouble with your partner.
No.
Not co-signing.
No. We had the conversation. I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. Some other dude telling me what to do for you? I got that problem because it's probably a guy somewhere. I don't think it's women saying that. But go ahead.
But I think one of the things that is important is, even if somebody else is calling the shots, if that thing is important to your partner, you might have to give it up.
Well, yeah, but why can't I express it? My point is, and this is what I'm getting into, my point, you know what kind of, and this kind of dovetails on what we talked about earlier, you know what kind of impact that makes on relationships?
Yes.
And watch this, impacts it makes on ourselves. So if I do it the day after or the day of, no, the day after and the day before, that ain't good enough. I got to do it on that day. You get what I'm saying? And I'm getting at somewhere, and I'm being funny about it, but I'm getting at somewhere that begin to impact. You don't love me, or I'm not worthy of your love, or I'm not. You see what I'm saying? That begin to impact. That begin to impact how you see yourself. And lo and behold, like I said, number 3, do not let somebody in your family, man or whatever, do something for it, and then you are uptight, you know, or and vice versa, right? You know, and it's not just women, but vice versa. That, you know, well, would you call them cook for so and so? Well, she can cook, I can't. You know what I mean? You know, somebody else bought her a Mercedes Benz. Well, that's fine. I thought a Honda was good for you. You know what I'm saying? And what I'm saying, and this gets us. I'm saying it causes all kind of anxiety, and that's why I go back to that whole unhealthy expectation, because if the key thing is how one treats someone, because that gift can be very transactional as well, right? Sometimes that people use that gift to buy themselves out of trouble or something wrong they have done, you know. So it's really shaping these things when it comes to that, and I think in particularly for Black women, it's an article and. Before I get into that article, what made, in your research, what made those kind of labels stick? That she has to be the superwoman. Where did that come from? I have my own thoughts.
Yeah. I do think a lot of it is societal. And these are the things that I look forward to hearing more about as I do these interviews and things. But I do think a lot of it is societal. I think that, you know, we have been told for so long as Black women, you know, the Black girl magic, you can do anything, you know, you have to work twice as hard.
Ain't Wonder Woman white?
What do I...
Wonder Woman white, right?
Yeah.
Black girl magic. I ain't see it. I'm just being funny, y'all. I'm just being funny. I'm like, hold up. Ain't the Colonel white? And Black folk love chicken? I'm just busting up a couple constructs there. I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. They're talking about, I like chicken and the Colonel white. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
But, you know, even, you know, being able to take care of our families, all members of our families while working 2 and 3 jobs, like this is a construct that has been built over decades, generations, right? Oh, my mama can do it all. Like my mama can do it all, like everything, all the things.
You know what's interesting? And I have a lot of Indian friends. That's expected of Indian women too. Right? And then who at the end of the day, let me say a couple things. So with Black women achieving success, right? It's not like she just got imported from Mars or Saturn, right? Like she came from another planet. She has always been here. And she has always, what's shocking to me, you know, I'm one of 7. What's shocking to me, all the women in my family work. So this new working woman, I don't know where I'm sure my man over here, his parents work. So this all of a sudden, there's people keep saying this woman working. You know, the problem is women working. No, it was a particular, there was some women that didn't work. They had a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? And they were the ones doing chilling, having other people raise their kids, right? That fit that financial model, right? So this whole idea that all of a sudden women got smarter, I don't know where that came from, right? I'm just saying this stuff is, when you really think about it, women are working. Like I said, all the women in my family work, right? And women, all of a sudden, she's this phenomenal woman. And women have always been phenomenal. And I don't know, like, who flipped the switch and somebody went to sleep and they woke up and all of a sudden she's here. And they always been here.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and specifically when it comes to, and I think it's really interesting that you bring it up Indian women as well, because I think it's a matter of, there are phases in society where certain people are seen and recognized, and like they have their moment in the sun. And I think over, several generations, we went from like the feminist movement in the 70s, which completely ignored Black women, right? And then we started to evolve a little bit. And then in the 80s, we got Oprah and we got, all of these phenomenal women. And now, they kind of had their moment in the sun, the good, bad, and the ugly. And I think a lot of it is just who, to your point, who is getting seen and recognized at a certain time and for what reasons. And I think that plays a lot into this.
So let me ask you, so why do certain things stick? Stereotypes stick with others, some and not others. So
I think sometimes stereotypes are given to us.
Which is true, yeah.
They are purposefully kind of reiterated over and over again so that they get into our minds, so that they will stick because it serves a higher purpose, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example from education, because that's kind of that's my wheelhouse. A Nation at Risk in the 1980s, I think it was 1983. Mm-hmm. President Reagan put out this A Nation at Risk report, and schools are failing and public schools are terrible.
No data.
And our students are not getting they're not ready for a modern world, and listen to how that has been played over and over. Every time we get a new, whether it's No Child Left Behind or Every Student Succeeds or we always get this, our schools are failing and our American United States students can't keep up. And we have gotten that over and over and over and over and over again for the past 40 some years. Yeah. And so that is now in our minds. Right? Like that is now, schools are failing. Schools are failing. So now you go out in society, you got people talking about test scores, not talking about the test or the fact that the tests are not made for all students or anything like that. We're talking about failing schools because they're not reaching, a certain level on this test, right? So we're not dealing with the actual issue. And I think that some of these narratives really are pushed by people because they serve a certain purpose.
So, and it's a phrase, and I'm sure you understand it, cognitive dissonance, right? The very person who's calling someone angry is screaming at the person who said they got an anger issue.
Often, yeah, yeah.
So, what delusional? It's based on conditioning, right? Because I think that people hit the override button, and a lot of people don't understand how they've been conditioned to believe something that's not true and override their own experience of something that is true that they exhibit. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? And the point of when you really start breaking down, asking people the question, like, so when you get mad, what does that attribute to? And it's Deborah Tannen, she got this thing, I think it's gender flex or genderlex or something like that, right? And she said, a man coming, it's all language, right? Mm-hmm. A man comes in and he gets mad, they say he lost his cool. Woman get mad, she got emotional. Now it's the same thing, but one sounds someone lost control, don't have control, based on gender, and then the other person said, well, he just temporary moment, right?
Yeah.
And then we begin to look at those dynamics and let that shape our mind because we don't do the investigation. We don't ask the question, right? First of all, even when it comes to No Child Left Behind, like would you went home and then pick them up from school? I mean, we got to begin to ask these kind of questions and challenge what's being thrown at us, right? From all these, variants or points, right? Or environments. We got to ask the question, why do you think that, this, Black women are angry? Like, why? Matter of fact, they may have a legitimate reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see you pretty pissed off in traffic too now, by the way. If somebody disrespect you, I see you pretty, ticked off as well. So I think, in this I think we got to begin to ask the question.
Yeah.
And we can't just let things permeate and begin to condition our mindset. Some, you know, we got to take that condition out.
Yeah.
You can't leave, you know, when you wash your hair, you can't leave condition in there forever.
No.
But some odd reason, these ways of thinking, and these, you know, now these strobes, what I now show these narrowly defined constructs, begin to permeate that. And here's the other thing. And then when that next generation comes up, and then they friends with people, and they be sitting there going, wow, that person, you know what I'm saying? The next person comes up and say, nah, I don't see it like that. You know what I'm saying? So we got to be the same way, right? So anything that comes into our sphere, right, we got to begin to just ask the question, what makes it true?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love about being a researcher. Like, it built my mind that way over that 4 years where, you know, somebody gives me information, I'm like, oh, let me test that out before I just commit it to memory.
Yeah, and then here's the other thing, like we talked earlier as well. Okay, why you want me to make 100? Why 150? Like, where that number came from? Like, you woke up one day, 150.
Just like a random, yeah.
I mean, so it's like okay, why that number? Why not 250? I mean, you know, so I think at times, whatever that interaction is and that conversation, you know, we got to ask the right questions, right, to get at the right solution or a solution. It may not be, I don't want to say right as in narrow, but we got to get to a resolve. Like, well, you know, why do you, even if it's, so for instance, even if it's someone saying, I look at you and I expect you to be this way based on what the stereotype is and how, now they're not saying it's all subconscious, and the conditioning. So what makes you think I don't have the right, or if something happened to me, why can't I express myself that way? Why wouldn't I be? If somebody slaps you upside your head or cuts you out or whatever the thing is, the grievance, the issue, right? Do you think it's, because I think that'll help deconstruct how they've been conditioned. Because I always say you got to get the concrete wet again. Once it get hard, it's a whole nother animal.
Yeah.
So I think that when it comes to these things, I think that you got to begin to ask that question.
Yep.
And sometimes, and I know we don't want to always be in the teaching mode.
It's exhausting, but yes.
It is. But let's put them to work. Let's start asking them some questions, right? The officer says, okay, you want me to do some work? Here you go. But I think that'll help us, and I think that whole talk therapy component to it, it can get tiring. But you know what? I will say this. If you set a precedent and say, man, you know, if I ask Tori that question, she going to ask me a question. How come? So why do you think they get mad? Why do you think black women get mad? Well, do you know what happened? I didn't know what happened. So how would you decide they just get mad if you don't know what happened?
Yep.
Right? Then you know what people are going to start doing? I ain't going to go and ask that person. Because they put me to work. You see what I'm saying? That could be one of those ways, whatever it may be, right? You know, if you want to have that kind of conversation, you know, so I think we can put people to work, and thinking is working, you know, is work. And I think we don't have to carry that. So that could be one of those things that after a while, people leave you alone. You start asking questions.
Yeah. No, I remember I saw a random video one time, and you know, again, my 9-year-old said, "Who talks to you that way? And who gave you the idea that it's okay to talk to somebody that way?" Zipped him right up, like just everything. So he's just like, whoop, because nobody talks to him that way, right? And so it was a way to disarm him, because it was just this really practical, like approaching it from a place of curiosity, like you were discussing, like, maybe this isn't the appropriate way to approach somebody who is not, you know, screaming and yelling at me. And I think that oftentimes curiosity, approaching something from a space of curiosity, and that doesn't, you know, I'm not talking about in a place where you're like feeling inherently unsafe. Like, you don't have to give people a benefit of the doubt if you feel unsafe. But, you know, in a moment where, you know, with a 9-year-old, you know, just, hey, yo, why do you feel like this is an okay way? Would you like if I did that to you? Like, just start to unpack those things. That can be helpful.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, if you don't have the words, which at times people don't have the right words, right? And I think that's critical. And then sometimes you don't know how to ask the right questions, right? So these are the tools that people need, to ask that question. And the other thing is begin to challenge, not condemn. So that's the other aspect of that, and through curiosity, that can help, because then I think we can get away from being automatically discriminatory.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think what happens is what's in people's head, when they come out, they be like, I ain't mean to say that.
Yeah.
Because it sounds good in their head, right? Yeah. So it sounds good in people's head. And then at times it depends on the relationship. It depends on the dynamic, right? Sometimes we could be there, not with everybody, we could be there to give them that aha moment by asking them the question, what makes you think that I'm that way? They may say they don't know. Then you may say, well, you need to think about what you watch, who you listen to, what you read, that you have this perception predicated on who I am and what I am and how I behave, right? So those are the kind of questions. And, people may go back and go, wow, because at times people don't even hear how they sound.
Yeah.
See, sometimes we give people too much credit.
Yep.
What comes out, what comes in, what's the end comes out, right? And sometimes they can't catch it fast enough, and so I think those things, when it comes to, especially when we're talking about, most of this stuff is cultural differences.
Yep.
Right? It's really not, it's what you believe about me, how I look, but that's created by an idea and an image. You put a word up, if you put angry up, that means that. Well, if you put another word up, somebody either created the word first, probably pretty much, or signs me, or put the picture up, put the image up. So as soon as the image come up, they don't want you to hit the pregnant pause button. You just go right to it. That means that, and you go, why is that the case?
Yeah.
So that's how we'll begin to break up that kind of concrete, and that's how we begin to break up in people's mind how they've been conditioned. Because a lot of times people don't. No one walks around and say, I've been indoctrinated, right?
Yeah.
To believe that. If we ask those curious questions and begin to say, are they the only people that get angry?
Yeah. I think it's also important to highlight specifically for people from minoritized or marginalized populations is, it's okay to be like, I don't feel like it today.
Oh, no,
like,
yeah.
Like, I don't feel like being the teacher today. I don't feel like being here, because I think that's so often, like, we don't necessarily tap in or take care of ourselves,
which is true.
In those moments.
I agree.
And so it's important to, like, kind of check in and be like, where do I want to take this today? Is this relationship worth it? Like, is this person worth it? I mean, I know it's
No, you're right. And you brought up a key word, right? You brought up marginalized, right? So that means someone has marginalized them. That does not mean they marginalize themselves.
Correct.
So when people say, then you got to ask the question, who marginalized them, right? Because I think that's critical, right? Because when that comes up, people act like people self-identify themselves that way.
Right.
As opposed to somebody putting that type of label. No kid walks around and says, I'm at risk. No, I don't know anywhere, even if they're in danger, right? No one says I'm hard to reach. Well, it depends on who's trying to reach me.
Right.
So I think at times that's the first question. Who said that I was that way?
And that's why a lot of people have moved towards using the word minoritized as opposed to minority. It's to highlight the fact that it's a verb. Somebody actually created a situation in which somebody was a minoritized individual, as opposed to minority, like being a label. Somebody created that, right? There was a dominating culture that created that set of circumstances.
I would love to be in them rooms when they come up with this stuff. I'd be like, can I get in that room? Because I was in a room before that kind of changed the dynamics. But I want to get in these rooms. And you know what the funny thing is? If you don't get in that room to change, they'll get in the room of your mind. And then they'll shift things around in your head, which is your mind. And then that's going to impact your thinking. And then that's going to impact your behavior. So you got to say, I wasn't in the room, and whatever they left with the room about me, I had no say in it. Therefore, because people are going to treat you according to what they expect of you and how they have identified you. Now, sometimes they're conditioned to believe a certain way, and that's how that interaction happens. So I would say, at the culmination of as you begin to do these discoveries, has it been healthy and healing in this endeavor? And then, have you had any participants through this process as, man, this has been redeeming?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The way that I am doing quantitative research is different than the traditional way.
Yeah.
So I talk a little bit, and now I'm going to nerd out again.
No, nerd out.
I talk a little bit in my dissertation about how, there is a specific way that researchers who do quantitative research do sampling, right? And they try to keep it very clean and clinical, and this is the purpose of the study. And what I found was that Black women and femmes weren't getting back to me. Like, I got participants, but I'm like, I need more Black women and femmes. And so I started reaching out individually to people. Hey, I'm at this stage in my dissertation process. I'm just trying to get done. Like, these are, this is the study. This is what it's about. And it was phenomenal. People will come, hey, sis, yeah, I got, like, complete strangers. There was a built-in camaraderie, collaboration, collectivism that, like, they felt personally responsible for me finishing this project. And yes, I got a lot of people that was like, oh man, I didn't even think about this. I didn't think about how, these things happen in my body. And now I'm paying attention to when my heart races or when I'm having these reactions in the higher education learning environment.
Oh, something just came to mind. We know, I shouldn't say we, some people may know, how unhealthy thinking about yourself can have health implications.
Yes.
Have you go expound? I just want to drop that. That will stay right there. I ain't gonna go no further.
There is tons of research and again, just kind of bringing it all together. Just thinking about, we started talking about like perseverance and things like that, and I said, you can overwater a plant. You can. There is this theory called John Henryism, right? And I don't know if you know the folktale of John Henry, but it was he built railroads back before machines, and then a machine came along. Long story short, and he was basically out of a job, but saying, "Look, I'm the best man that ever built a railroad, and I will beat this machine." So he took his hammer and raced this machine to build this railroad track, and he's going, and with the last swing of his hammer, drops dead. Right? So he beats this machine. Like, this whole thing, like, I can do this better than this machine. You can't take this from me. And yet this is a theory that talks about specifically Black women and people of color, and how they will work themselves almost to death. Heart attacks, diabetes, strokes, high blood pressure, because they are trying so hard. They're working so hard to prove that they are somebody. And yes, those can have long-term health effects because your resistance is down. Some people are more susceptible to like cancer and things like that just because their immune system is not right.
How can we help them? How can we help them? Well, I think that's $1 million question, right? And that's one of the things that I'm trying to figure out now, because it's not like you can remove yourself from society. And a lot of these challenges are caused, right, by being in an inequitable society. So I think the first step is just like being able to name and validate, like, these are experiences that happen to other people. Here's the research. Like, here are the numbers. Here are hardcore numbers that says what you are experiencing is real. Take a deep breath. Yeah.
Take a deep breath and accept the fact that what you are feeling is valid. I think that's a huge first step. And then we just think about, what does it look like to be in rooms with other people who feel this way? And then what does it look like to do healing in a way that can also bring about change?
Yeah, it's a good friend of ours. Was it Bettina Love? Right. I went to her. Shameless plug here.
Oh my gosh, she's phenomenal. The reason I went to grad school, by the way.
So a couple things, and I'm just this is how you learn. So I didn't make all this up on my own. I do read. So one thing she says is you gotta give some things up. Right. Number two, you can't be in charge of everything, and everything ain't gonna look like how you do it. So you gotta help people grow. And the good old adage is the young daughter watch the mom cooks. But the mom never let the daughter cook because she don't do it exactly like how she did it. But she got 20 years on her, right? You gotta let them burn the food at times because you burnt the food, right? So I think letting some things go is some of these remedies, and then also just stepping away, stepping back.
Yeah.
Right.
Resting. Oh my God, we don't talk enough about resting and sleep and how important that is to, some of these health impacts are worsened by the fact that we are trying to do so much that we don't get adequate sleep.
Yeah, because you bring up something interesting with that, and the whole COVID thing was when entertainment in every place, almost everything got quiet. Nature. In certain parts of the country, they could see the skyline. Certain parts of the world, they could see the skyline. It's amazing. It's just like, just breathe for a minute.
Yep.
Theirs was out, right? Things, in that short window of time, it was amazing how nature just flipped itself. Also in that discovery, what people found out was because of activity and busyness, they quiet the noise in their head that they need to deal with. And then when all the noise from the busyness went quiet, the noise in their head got louder. So back to what you're saying, the rest piece, so much brain activity, right? That's another way that it drains us, where I can't get sleep because my activity is so high, right? That even when I'm resting, I'm not relaxed.
I can't bring myself down, I
can't wind myself down. Right, and then of course, Zambian, Ambien, and all them other kind of which come right, and then teaching people how to quiet their mind, and more importantly, how to deal with that why. What am I running from, and what am I running to, and what I'm running away from, and where should I be running in the right direction, right? And sometimes you just got to give it up.
Yeah.
And you got to collaborate. And then you got to be cool with the results. Because number one, everybody ain't going to be you at the level you at. And you're going to have to accept some things how they are. Right? Because then you chasing, and I don't even like using the word perfectionism because that's a whole nother, but I got all these pet peeves with these words, but because I think, people think I'm perfect. There's no work needs to be done. And so, right, there's always work to be done. But it's being able to take rest from work. So I think, those implications of people's physical health has impacted that. And you got to just say, what am I chasing?
Yeah. I think the person that has taught me the most about that is my child, right? Like, he'll get up in the morning and he'll be like, I want to wear this striped shirt with the polka dot pants. And I'm sitting there like, oh, my
That's
God.
a Fox phone. You're like, you can't do that. The world won't let you do that.
But you know what? Like, why am I? And I started saying, like, is this how I want to spend my money? No.
No.
So if you want to wear stripes and polka dots, go ahead. You don't want to wear a coat? Like, you'll figure it out.
And it's funny because it's like, who created that rule book? Like, stripes don't go, now I wouldn't wear it. I'm just saying, but just because I wouldn't wear it, that means people can't wear it.
And am I, like, who does it help? Which one of us does it help to have a half an hour conversation because he wants to wear this outfit and I want him to put on this outfit? And, like, he's not hurting anybody.
You know what? Maybe, just maybe, he's expressing his individuality.
Yeah.
Right? And this is not aha moment for you, but an aha moment for us. Maybe at times He's saying, I want to break up the construct. Maybe at times, this is where I get my comfort, my space, my rest, my relax. I don't have to put on, right? And for those who think like that, right? Maybe it's just that. And maybe that's the remedy.
Yeah.
That sometimes we just got to let some things go.
Yep.
And that high achievement and labels and all this and the stressed out. And look, let me tell you something. You drop dead, they going to pull somebody right next up to you.
And they will.
And they will.
And they will.
And they have done. So, maybe that's the remedy, right? Don't box yourself in. And take time to breathe.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you, like, I try to live now, and this is all very recent, right? Like, I try to live based on how I feel on any given day. Like, some days I'm like super productive and I can have, I can meal prep and I can da-da-da-da and I can work from home and I can work on the dissertation and I got the baby, like, everything is right. And there are some days where I'm like, man, ain't a darn thing getting done. Not today. It won't. And everybody's got to fend for themselves.
And
like,
and the sun's still going to shine.
And it's still going to shine.
and hours are going to still pass.
And hours are going to still pass. And you know what? I think being able to accept that the world can survive without me, right? Like, that was I was like, oh my, clutching my pearls, like, oh my gosh, nobody can do anything without me.
Why?
I went laid down one day and I was like, oh, look, the house hasn't burnt down. Everybody's okay. Baby has his little quesadilla. Like, we good. Everybody's good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It will be okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know the commercials say just okay is not okay. but in this situation, it will be okay. As we wrap up, what can we look forward to? Or what you think that end result going to be? Have that been figured out, or?
Well, so the end result for this phase, I do have some data, right? And that is that depending on what type of higher education institute you go to, the interesting thing about the findings is that people experience these identity-based rejection incidents no matter where they go.
Yeah.
However, how your body physiologically and emotionally responds to it varies, right? And so I'm looking forward to unpacking that a little bit more through interviews, because I think people's personal experience really gives a lot of light to why these results are the way they are.
If they feel in that way in a place that's toxic, and I know people got to make a living, right? Do you believe they should come up with another plan to escape that environment?
No, they should get out as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And I know that's not possible for everybody.
I know, yeah.
But, to your earlier point, they're going to replace you with somebody else if you drop dead. Like, and what kind of a legacy is that? You have given your all to a place that doesn't value you. Like, and I think so often we think that that's the right or the noble thing to do, but I
die with my boots on.
Yeah, like I'm going back to my girl Cookie Lyons. Like, I gotta put me first, Lucius. It's about that time. And so if you're in a toxic environment, if you're starting to feel those symptoms, you get up on Monday morning and you like actually dread getting out of bed. It takes you really long to get dressed. You really need to be thinking about what you can do to start your exit plan.
I want to wrap by saying this, for those, unbeknownst to them, we got to do better. And for folk who are narrowly defining people, think about the impact it can have on you. Right, we got to get healthier. First of all, we down here together, so let's clear that up. And it ain't like we just met, too. We ain't just meet. We've been around for quite a bit of time. Don't act like you ain't never seen nobody like me before. At least on TV, as seen on TV, you have, right? But I think one of the things as you're doing this phenomenal research is it's a call out to people in these places of environment. We as human beings create these places. We as human beings create this chaos, right? And for all types of reasons, we got to look at better ways on how we can be more of a productive individual. And what role do we play in creating these kind of stresses in people's lives based on, narrowly defined stereotypes, narrowly defined labels. Because, most of the people who may be a culprit of this wouldn't want that done to themselves. Remember I said whatever you expect of others? Like no one would want somebody to do this to them, even if they doing it, right? Because the hardest medicine to swallow is your own, right? So actually, would you drink this first? So, and that's a call out to people in all these environments, man. We can be better, and if you don't, we can get you some help.
Yeah.
Right. We can give you the tools that's needed because, you going to work in that type of environment is unhealthy for you. Right. If someone's unhealthy in that environment and they walking around wounded, tight, whatever the case may be, it's going to impact you.
And then it's going to have a ripple effect on your family.
Yeah. And productivity. It's going to impact productivity. So, you may not care until you do care, right? Until it happens to someone you love. Right. So we can change these dynamics. It's, all hope is not lost. But the one thing we got to do is we got to do the work. Right. And we got to identify. And for those who, another thing Bettina said, Dr. Love, right? She said, use your privilege. It ain't going nowhere. It's like credit card, just pay your bill. That's all.
Yeah.
She said, use your privilege. And I'm speaking to those who are in authority. Use your privilege. Pull somebody aside you close with, and you can check them, right? Your counsel, and say, yo, man, we got to make this place better, And I'm saying man as in universal, not as in gender. So we can make these places and all these sectors of society, a better place, And if you have those challenges, get some help. Get some help. So, and if you don't have the right words and you don't know why you are the way that you are, get some therapy.
Yeah. Therapy is a wonderful thing.
It's a
I don't
beautiful
think
thing.
we utilize therapy often enough. Therapy is a wonderful thing. I don't know why people don't go more often. Yes, you learn some things about yourself that may not be great, but
well, it's the word, right? So I work out. That's therapeutic, right? Washing up is therapeutic. Hello, somebody, because we're gonna smell full time, right?
Right.
So all these things we gotta. I think it's the way we look at that. That's once again we hear the word therapy. Something wrong with me? No, it could be like maintaining. Right? Something that's therapeutic. Therapeutic doesn't mean something wrong with you. That means you want to keep all things regulated. That something don't become wrong with you, right? So I think those words kind of, I don't want to say counseling because I want to coach. Coach, what a coach going to do? Guide, lead, and direct, right?
But that stigma doesn't have to be there either. To your point about constructs, like, child, I go to therapy, love my therapist. Like,
yeah. Law and Order said, they said, rich people have learned money don't solve their problems. That's why they're in therapy. And poor people know to go to therapy because money they can solve their problems. So, I mean, that's a lot of it. But, I'm being kind of, funny with it, but, adding some humor. But, it's nothing wrong. This is therapeutic. Talk therapy is probably one of the best things you can do.
Yep, absolutely. 100%.
With people that can give you a roadmap and give you the tools. Because a lot of people just don't have the tool. They only have the tool that they used to using.
Right.
Like you said, John Henry. He dead. Y'all, don't kill yourself.
For a job that...
Tap out. You ain't beating that machine. So, I mean, the thing, and that's something a man built. So, I think as we wrap, do better.
Yeah, take care of yourselves.
Get better. Create the environment. Now, let me say this. Make the environment better than you came and you left it. Because I'm going to say create the environment. I'm like, no, don't say that. Create that environment that's going to build, that's going to grow and nurture to cultivate, a healthy learning environment and a stable environment where people come to go to work and be productive, right? Because that's at the end of the day, that's what the goal should be. Absolutely. Any closing thoughts from you?
No, I'm just really appreciative for the conversation and being able to share my research with you. I appreciate you having me. So.
Yeah, and she got a crew. There's a couple of them coming back. Until next time, we'll see you again for the Relationship Lab.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, that's cool again. Awesome. I think that's enough.